welcome to Behind the Lines. I'm Diane Dayton. Today we're going to talk to a woman that I am just fascinated with because her story is one of trials, tribulations, but success and perseverance. And she's written a book called Ojoma's Song and the now Ojoma's Melody. And we're going to give a little bit of background as we welcome Ojoma Edeh Herr, who's also a professor at Millersville University. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me again.
Yes, it's so good to see you.
Yeah, nice seeing you too.
And the very first book that you wrote was Ojoma's Song. And it talks about your journey from Nigeria coming to the States. And you came to the States in 1987. But
that is correct.
Give us some background on who you are, what brought you here, and really the groundwork for the first book.
Yeah, actually, the first book is literally my journey to become who I was when I wrote that book. And I was a product of arranged marriage. I grew up in Nigeria, and I was married at the age of 15 and a half years old. And I am 17 years and 16 days older than my daughter. So that was a very dramatic journey there. But I was not a typical girl. I tend to speak my mind. If black is black, I say it's black, and I don't care who says otherwise.
Yes.
But my culture, during my time, you're not supposed to disagree with men. So if the man says white, whether it's black, you're supposed to agree. And because I didn't do that, I was kicked out of my home. So I was in exile. So it was during the exile that I connected with people with disabilities, because I was outcast. I was sleeping on the cemeteries, and so that I don't get abused constantly at night. And then I see people with disabilities being an outcast like me. So I bonded with them, and that's really why I'm here today as a special educator. And what you're going to be talking about, that's why Olive Branch of Hope came to be to begin with, because of my passion for that. So we were people with disabilities at my time, and myself in exile, we were abandoned by the society. And we survived, we bonded together, and we survived together.
Wow.
And in also doing that, I came to the attention of a missionary. I said, Nigerian people don't like people with disabilities like this. This person is different. And long story short, that's when she asked me if I would come with her to U.S. to help her take care of her daughter that has disabilities.
Okay.
And of course I did. I have 6th grade formal education when I came.
Wow.
And I studied for 11 months, and I got my GED. Barely passed, but I did pass.
Good.
So I got my GED, and it was wonderful. And that's when I really discovered that I had brain, because I was consistently told that I was stupid and ugly. And so you tend to believe those things. And then when I got GED, I said, oh, I have brain. I'm going to go forward.
Yes.
And then that's how I continue my education journey.
But you really have acquired a lot of education. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, I wanted to go to Millersville University. It was too far. So I applied to Westchester University, and I wasn't accepted because I barely passed my GED. I said, oh, that's okay. So I went to Delaware County Community College for 1 year, worked so hard, brought my GPA up, applied again to Westchester, and all this time, I could barely speak English, and even one of my professors said I have mental retardation because I could barely speak English. And my attitude is, what do I care? This opportunity of knowledge, the door just opened. I'm going to take advantage of it, and I don't care who says what.
Yes.
And 10 years and 2 days from my GED, here I was graduating from Columbia University, Ivy League University, and been acknowledged and recognized by the president as the one that is determined to make a difference in the life of women and children.
Boy, and you certainly are doing that with women, children, and people in general.
And people in general, yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You had great support when you were in Westchester with the family too, didn't you?
Yes, I did. My American mom. My American mom was single when I met her, and then she got married, her first marriage at the age of 78.
Wow.
She's in heaven now.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do have wonderful. And I have American brothers and sisters in Glenn and Doris, and they supported me. I actually lived with them for a year. Yeah, the Lord opens doors for me, and I was welcomed.
Yeah. So Ojoma's song has been around since when? The very first book that you wrote. What year was that?
That was published in, I think it's 2009 or,
Okay.
yeah, about 2008 or 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was published earlier in 2000. And it is good and people like it, but if you read that book, you notice there's gaps. And as I tell my friends, if you also read that book, you notice that I was just telling you about the chronicling the journey, the
Yes.
pain, and how God rescued me. And then, of course, you will know why that is slightly different from this. But yes, you see my journey and the pain that I went through because my only daughter was taken away from me. The two things I really wanted when I was a little girl was to be a mom and to help women. I don't know why helping women, but maybe because I saw how women were treated in my culture and I didn't like it. And nobody seemed to be, quote, bold enough to stand up. Well, little do I know that you're not really supposed to stand up to them. But so those were my dreams when I was little. Yeah.
Well, you really had a lot of courage. But for you, there was a direction and you weren't turning back, right?
No, I was not turning back. I really, the pain, the struggle, the abuse, everything I went through was a lot. In fact, I got the secular counseling,
Yes.
and that's actually what helped me to write the first book. And the spiritual counseling that I got, that God just literally gave it to me, helped me to write this one, and about my journey. Yes, I refused to give up.
Yeah.
Giving up was not an option.
Right.
I have been through so many situations that I should have been dead, and I didn't. And it wasn't until recently, about 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, that I finally, I was saved to serve. And why should I give up?
Yeah. Can you briefly tell us some of those situations where you were not to survive, but you did?
Well, I was poisoned. That's one. I was supposed to die from that. I was a preemie. And at that time, during my time, preemie are not good in my country. They're supposed to leave the baby on a shed, like outside, and not feed the baby until the baby die. I had the most wonderful mother. And when men goes to the farm, she will come out and get me and feed me, take care of me. So when this baby wasn't dying, so they decided, okay, she can be kept inside.
Yeah.
in the meantime, of course, I was inside the whole time.
Right.
They just didn't know it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I was born in a mud building and thatched roof, and I was born in July, the heavy rainy season.
Yeah.
And I was almost killed from that as well. And yeah. And when I was quote married, you go to the market to buy food and carry a load on your head. We don't have the weather like you have here. So, and all of a sudden the sky turned dark and the storm came, literally. And the women and myself that were on the street, we couldn't run to safety and we were swept away. I was so tiny, by the way.
Wow.
I was thrown up and I got jammed in the rocks formation. And what seemed to be like eternity, I was rescued and taken to the hospital. So I thought the women with me had the same experience. They all died.
Wow.
Why did I survive?
Wow. Yeah.
And I can just keep going and going and of the situation like that.
Yeah. And that's what led you here, because you just didn't stop. You kept going forward.
Yes.
With these open doors.
Yes.
That were presented, and you felt being taken care of, didn't you?
The Lord was taking care of me every step of the way. In fact, I had said in the first book that I have come to a point when the walls were caving in on me and very tight, and the ground that I stood was giving away. And every time I look up, the Lord always airlifted me.
Yeah.
He never left me.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this also led you to your life here, and that first book that you wrote, and this is a real recent release as of January 2023.
Yes.
Is now, instead of Ojoma's song, it's Ojoma's Melody. So we're going to get into what that entails and the growth, because that's what this is about too, isn't it?
Yes.
And the difference you're making. Go ahead.
I finally have a melody. And if you look at the little bottom there, it says becoming a loved woman, Nigerian style.
Wow.
I finally discovered that I am loved.
Wow.
On the journey that I was poked and pain, and I could feel the pain. But then it wasn't until 2013 that I discovered there are roses on those pokey things that you feel all the time.
Right.
So why am I not enjoying the roses? Why am I focusing on the pain instead of focusing on the blessing? I have children. I have 4 children.
Wow.
2 boys and 2 girls. I have actually unanswered prayers every step of the way, even when I was in exile.
Wow.
So I decided to go back and focus on answered prayers, that in everything that I went through, even though most of them I thought I was alone, I was never alone.
Never alone. Okay, with that, we're going to take a brief pause. There's a lot more to come. Stay with us. LCtv 66 is your community channel, and your donations keep us on the air and help to produce more local programs. Send your tax-deductible donation of $500, $100, or more to the address on the screen. Or think of it this way: for the price of a couple of movie tickets, you can help support your community channel. Send what you can and be a part of all that is good about Lancaster County. Thank you for your tax-deductible donation to LCtv 66, Lancaster's Connection. Welcome back to Behind the Lines. We're talking to professor and author, Dr. Ojoma Edeh Herr. Her first book we talked about was Ojoma's Song, which really entails what she went through leaving Nigeria, her life there, and then getting to the States and what she's doing right now. This is her most recent book, Ojoma's Melody, just released in January of 2023. So this gets into what, Ojoma?
Well, this actually has 2 main themes, topic to focus on my children, the blessing of my children, and Olive Branch of Hope, and the blessing of Olive Branch of Hope. I truly love children. Everybody that knows me know that, and I wanted to have as many as I could, but I thought the door was closed on me. And then God opens the door and said, no, it wasn't closed. Remember how you were adopted to become my children. There's so many avenues you can have your children. And then I was blessed. And take a step back, my daughter that was taken away from me 5 days before she turned 3 years old, I prayed during that period that God should protect her. And she was protected. That was an answer prayers. I prayed that one of these days I get to see her. I did. And I actually got to bring her to the U.S. That was an answer prayer. And perhaps one of my many, many, many miracles happened in 1990 when I went home for the first time to see if I can see my daughter. And I went home. I didn't have return visa. And I actually... so I didn't care because I really wanted to see my daughter. And I went to American Embassy, applied for visa, and my application was denied. And I was coming out with a missionary that did the same for her daughter. And a man that was working at the gate asked, did you get your visa approved? And I said, no, mine was denied. And she said hers was approved. And she said, why don't you go back in and vows that she is telling the truth, meaning me. And so like, okay, we went, and my visa was approved in less than 2 hours after it was denied. And during that time, what is miraculous about it is, during that time in Nigeria, because of our corruption, they would not even entertain or look at another application until 3 months after the denial.
Oh, wow.
And mine was approved, denied, and approved the same day. Long story short, I came to thank the man. I didn't see him again. So on my way back home, taking public transportation, and here was that man selling water at the public garage and waving to me and smiling. I was the most confused woman for the longest time. I refused to believe it until I kept looking at the stamps in my passport.
Right.
It was real. And God sent his angel
Wow.
to guide me.
Absolutely. Your story is full of a lot of things like that, isn't
Yes.
it? Where you can literally see God's hand.
Yes.
And you have such a close and tight relationship with God. What else does this book get into?
Well, this book also kind of take a little step into discrimination.
Okay.
How to educate the public. Go with your own style to stamp out this disease.
Yeah.
And I'll give you one. I'm not going to mention this store.
Okay.
And when I buy things to go home, you don't want to meet me. I'm in my Saturday glory and I'm crazy and I buy in cash. Usually it's about $500. That's usually my budget.
Yeah.
On this particular date, bought everything self-checkout. The manager, who happened to be white, came and stopped me, wanted to see why I buy too much. Long story short, he wanted to check my receipt and the material I bought, and I really didn't have time for it. But I kept saying inside my head and said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I can do this, I can do this.
Yeah.
And just when I was saying that, one of my students came, Dr. Edeh, how are you? Ran, a white student, by the way, came and gave me the biggest hug you've ever seen, because I love my students. And the manager said, oh, I don't have to look at it anymore. I said, oh, no, you will. I'm still the black woman with the natural dreads that you think I stole something. You will match every item to the receipt. And that's how I that's how I address my, that's my style.
Yeah.
And when he finished, I said, well, fold it back and put them in the bags. And he did. And I left.
Yes, right.
So, yeah, discrimination still exists. But reverse form of discrimination is equally bad.
Yes.
So we do really have to stamp it out. And I use my style. So I address that there too. Yeah. And the blessing of Olive Branch of Hope.
Yes.
I love children. And I'll tell you one thing. In U.S. population, they tend to give you compliments to make you feel good. I'll tell you the population that will not do that. Individuals with intellectual disabilities.
Okay. All right.
If they don't like you, they'll tell you.
They'll tell you.
I love it.
Right.
So and
very honest, right?
They're very honest, and that's my kind of population. And I was really getting confused, and I was planning to close it. And God brought a family to my church.
Yes.
And that's how God used that family to help me to keep it and expand it.
Right.
Now we're expanded.
Right.
And we're doing very well.
Yes. So if we get a picture of this, as a professor at Millersville, you teach what?
Well, I teach a few things. I teach assessment and evaluation. I teach a graduate course called Research Method for usually master's students to take. And I teach how to design instruction and behavior management.
Okay. So then Olive Branch of Hope was at one time a nonprofit, right?
Yes.
So that started how?
Well, I have my kids that I needed to help as well, and a lot of kids in the community that needed help. And it's a funny story. And instead of buying a new car, I decided to take my car money and start this program so that I can help my kids and help kids in a community. That's how it started.
Right.
And then the state, ODP, Office of Developmental Disabilities, when their rep came and evaluated us and discovered that we're really good and we can do something valuable, and we were approved. And here we are.
And when was that? What year was that?
Well, that was actually late 2015, but we didn't take anybody from them until 2016.
Okay, and that's when that started. So this book is now available where, Ojoma?
Well, it's, the publisher is, in Give It a Week, is going to be at Amazon, it's going to be on Barnes & Nobles, all the bookstores, and I'm sure that my university will carry it as well, because they usually carry my books.
Is Ojoma's song still available as well?
Ojoma's song, and I have some copies, and I'm sorry I forgot to bring you some. Yeah, I still have copies of Ojoma's song, and it has gone through reprinting several times, and every time people read it, they said, you need to fill in the gap. I know there are gaps.
And that's what this is,
and that's what this is filling the gap and updated to bring me to where I am today.
Right, so that's why it makes a good 2-volume set.
That is correct.
Yeah, it really does. So then there's also a website, I believe, for Olive Branch of Hope, correct?
Yes, it's olivebranchofhope.com. There's a website for it, and you see what we do, the lovely people that work with us, our participants, our pictures, what we do. We truly have fun. And there's going to be a professional website design, it's not finished yet, that my books and will be actually display on that, and my story and my journey to come to where I am today.
Yeah. Well, you're making a big difference in a lot of lives through what you're doing at the university and what you're doing with Olive Branch of Hope.
Thank you.
And yeah, and it all comes from your journey.
Yeah, I do love my students. I truly love my students. I help in any way I could. Sometimes when my students cannot afford housing, I let them come and stay with me and for a semester or so, and I have space for it. So I love my students as well.
Yeah,
and a lot of my students like me.
They love you too. They absolutely love you too. Well, thank you for writing this sequel as well, because you're filling in the gaps.
Yes.
And for what you're doing with Olive Branch of Hope, because it's making a difference for all of us as well.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I also have wonderful parents for the Olive Branch of Hope, and hopefully you hear more about them.
Yes, we shall. We're going to hear more about Olive Branch of Hope.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being here today,
Thank you. I appreciate having me over again.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us today, too. I'm Diane Dayton with Behind the Lines, reminding you to look behind the lines. You might be surprised what you find.